Oh, there. Welcome to another interesting episode of the interview. Today, I'm so delighted to have a very good friend of mine, Pastor Enoch Joseph Aboi. I usually tell people that this is one person that I love to introduce all the time. For some reasons, we just share a lot. Aside from the fact that we have been friends since our undergraduate days till today. We have been very, very good friends, and he's one of my closest friends. But aside from that fact, we also share a lot of things in common. As a matter of fact, at some point, some people said that we are confusing us. I was like, no, my shape of nose is different from his. But anyways, so I'm so delighted to have Pastor Enoch Aboi, who I call the scholar, since we met. I have been calling this brother for the past 18, 20 years or so that I've known him. So I'm so delighted to him to just have some conversation, Pastor Enoch Aboi. Just as I said, he's a minister of the gospel. He is also a scholar of renown. He is a reputable scholar. This brother does a lot of scholarship. He's an academic or academician, whichever you choose. And he is also, he does a lot of things. Just reading his profile may take the entire interview, so I'll try to avoid that. I will just try to have a conversation. In doing that, you will get to know him. But currently, having graduated from Harvard, doing his master's in politics, ethics, and religion, he's currently doing his PhD at Cornell University in New York. So I'm so delighted to have you, my dear brother, join me for this wonderful conversation.
Thank you so much, my friend, my brother, and a scholarly one for that matter. Like you said, we call each other scholars, and not for anything, but because of our love for scholarship. I am so delighted to be here today, and welcome everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're watching from. I'm delighted to be here and to have a frank conversation with my brother, Seth. Thank you so much for having me.
And talking about frank conversation, a good place to start it is for some people that know you, they will be wondering, this guy has just been, as we say in Nigeria, he has just been eating books, devouring books. What is he thinking in terms of marriage? Are you celibate? Or are you thinking of getting married sometimes? By the way, this is frank conversation since you agreed to be part of this. So be ready for some of this. let's clear that and put it on the out of the way. Then we talk about other things.
All right. I think this is a question that so many people are waiting to hear me answer. And to hear you ask the question, I don't know whether you are the one they're expecting to ask me this question, but nevertheless, I'm going to answer. But before I do so, let me just say what I said to you backstage, right? That I know this is frank conversation, so it's going to be tough sometimes, right? So, but I told you initially that if any question is actually too difficult for me to answer, I wouldn't answer. But this is not one of those questions. This is quite cheap question that, like someone said, my driver can answer this one. But the problem is that my driver may not be in the same situation. So this is a personal question to me. To answer the question, the short answer to this question is okay. The question was, am I celibate? Celibate in the sense that, okay, I'm not married and I'm staying abstinent for the moment. Yes. Celibate in the sense that, okay, marriage is off the line forever as long as I live on this earth. The short answer is no. I know being in the church, people have asked me this question severally, and I usually, throw a joke to them, especially those who are married. If you ask me this question about marriage, when are you going to marry? Are you not going to marry or whatever? I asked them, okay, you were asking this question. Is it that you actually want me to marry and enjoy what you're enjoying, or to marry and suffer what you're suffering?
I would think probably is the former, not the latter.
Oh, to suffer what you're suffering. That's good. That's good
No, no,
also. I
no.
mean,
I mean to enjoy,
oh,
to
the former,
enjoy.
yeah, yeah, the former. Okay, yeah, I get it. I get it. To enjoy what you're enjoying. Um, for me, marriage is significant. Marriage is very important. If at all, I'll call myself a conservative. One of the things that I would try to conserve is actually the institution of marriage and the family itself. In that sense, I see myself as a conservative. All right. So if I see myself as such, that is to say that marriage is something that I consider to be very important. But again, I also know that marriage is challenging. I have had, the opportunity of seeing good marriages. I have had the opportunity of seeing challenging marriages that were challenged by different circumstances. And being a pastor in the church for some years, I've seen people come with complaints and the rest of them. And I was so quite, fortunate to have people trust and me so much to the extent that they open up even their marital issues to me. But I'm not in any way saying that those are issues or things that are making me hesitant about marriage. I am not hesitant about marriage. I'm proactive. I've always been. It's just that I will say in the sovereign will of God, because I like to fly on the wings of God's sovereignty, as I usually say. So I mean, I'm flying on the wings of God's sovereignty. The ride has been turbulent at some point. It's been tough, and but right now I think something good is coming on the horizon. I believe so. So marriage is factored into my life. I think so, as long as God will permit.
All right, so something good is coming on the horizon. We'll take you by your words, and after some time, if we don't see the good thing coming on the horizon, we're gonna remind you. We're gonna play this and remind you that you said something good was coming on.
Maybe I should say it in Nigerian parlance, right? Something is on the pipeline, but don't break the
Okay,
pipeline.
something is on the pipeline, you people. So just keep an eye on it, whatever it is, but it's something good. And jokes aside, I wanted to talk a little bit about you have been a pastor, and you know how in the African culture we prioritize marriage to some extent. I don't know whether you want me to say how old you are, but I would not, since you we didn't talk about that. But someone of your age
Mhm.
is not a youth, is not a child, so to speak. But you know, in the African culture, our friend Dr. O.J. Dixon usually describes it. I find his description very well, very apt. He says in the African culture, if you have someone that is 21 and he's married, right? He's not a youth. You will say that is an adult. But if you have someone that is 40, that is not married, you refer to him as a youth. That is typically African. We classify people, and sometimes to some extent we think about their importance and their contribution to society based on their marital status. You have been an experienced pastor. You have also been a professor in the seminary, and you have done quite a lot of research. And of course, we'll talk about your current PhD research. But I want you to talk a little bit about this dynamic, this cultural perspective. Of course, you and I know that there are renowned scholars, both in theology and in different fields, that contributed great things, and we are never married, right? And these are Westerners, and nobody, even if I mention some of the names, some people will not even know that these guys were never married. And nobody thought, wow, their contribution was not meaningful because they were never married. I want you to talk a little bit about this cultural perspective. Do we need some kind of redefinition of marriage and the way we look at singles. And I want you to mirror it down to the way churches handle singles or singleness.
This is something fascinating and something very important, especially in the African continent, or particularly in Nigeria, because like you said, I am one among so many that are so fortunate. I consider myself to be fortunate to have had the opportunity to be a pastor in churches without, being married, and at a point a senior pastor for that matter. So that is quite an opportunity. I consider myself to be lucky, if you believe in luck, but that is God's providence, if to talk in theological terms. But generally speaking, I know some people didn't find that comfortable, that I should be in that kind of a position, just because I wasn't married, and it was assumed that when Paul said that an elder should be a husband of but one wife, the husband must be married. But people actually failed to understand that both Timothy, to whom Paul was speaking, and Paul, who was doing the speaking, weren't married as at the time he was saying that, right? So the assumption that an elder, which in this interpretation would be a pastor, should be a husband of but one wife, is wrong. It's wrong to assume that that means that the pastor must be married, right? But I also know the cultural and the social, reasons why people feel like a person that should handle certain positions should be married, because in our culture, the idea of responsibility is seen as something that comes with people who are married. So someone who is married is said to be a responsible person. And that is as if to say that someone who is not married is not a responsible, person. And that could be quite
Yeah,
difficult.
it's usually, yeah, just to interject,
Hmm.
it's implied. It's usually implied by just saying that a married person is responsible. Conversely, there is always that implication that if you are not married, you are irresponsible to some
Yeah,
extent.
yeah,
Yeah.
and that's quite sad. That's quite sad. On a theological note, it's not everyone that is going to marry. Let's be frank about it. This is frank conversation. So it's not everyone that is going to marry. Even those who yearn, those who desire to marry, those who have the proclivity in terms of biology and whatever to marry, it's not everyone that's going to marry. So no matter what the culture says, that is not going to happen for everyone. So putting pressure on people that they must get married, I think is one of those reasons that people may want to be in a relationship and even in marriage for the sake of the marriage itself, just for the sake of that status, and not because they actually love the person. In some cases, not because they really really feel it's the time for them to get married, but because of the pressure of the culture, they just feel, yeah, they should just go ahead and marry. So for me, I would say that in a sense, like I said earlier on, it's understandable why people put those kind of pressure, because they feel, I usually tell youth that as long as you're youth and you're unmarried, you are a suspect unless you prove yourself otherwise.
That's true.
You're a suspect. People just assume you're doing things, right? People assume that you're involved in sexual activity. They just assume, even if you're a pastor. There's, oh, this guy, we don't know what he's doing. This guy must be doing some things. I mean, how can he stay this long without marriage? I mean, he must be doing some things. And so that is the assumption. I tell you, on the pulpit, I'll tell them, you're a suspect until you prove yourself otherwise, right? Including myself. So, so that's one of the reasons. They feel, okay, one will never be able to stay like that without getting involved in immorality. That's one reason. And I think there are reasons to believe that, but also there are exceptions, and we believe that God will always have remnants, no matter how bad the society goes, and there are remnants everywhere. in Nigeria, in America, and anywhere you can think of, no matter how, sexual immorality may have been normalized, there are those who would never engage in that. It's not like it's something easy, but it's something doable, and there are people who are doing it. And
And
so,
conversely, allow me to say too
yeah,
that some people usually use marriage just as a cover to continue to do in that kind of culture, right? Where there is that
yeah,
assumption
yeah.
that single people are immoral, promiscuous. You also find situation of people getting married and they only use the marriage as a cover, right? Since the society
Mhm.
gives them that kind of cover, they use the marriage as a cover to do all kinds of to engage in all kinds of things, and nobody suspects them because they are married. And you have a lot of that too, and nobody seems to pay attention. If you see a married man talking to a lady, we'll be like, oh, maybe he's just giving her a message. But by the time you see two single people together, that there must be something, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right. You're right. A research was conducted by a number of pastors. I wouldn't say the names, but because if I say it, you know it, and most of your audience will know it. But it's one of those DCCs in Kaduna State, because there were allegations that the younger pastors who were not married, like me, they were like me, and they were given opportunities to pastor or as associate pastor, or other positions like that. It was assumed, like I said, that every youth is a suspect until you've proven yourself otherwise, that these pastors were involved in sexual immorality. And these pastors actually went and did research, the younger ones who were not married. They went and did the research among pastors. Who are those involved in immorality,
Hmm.
right? How many cases? And they found out that it was more of the married people that were involved in immorality compared to the unmarried people. And
I'm not surprised.
when they brought their findings to the DCC chairman, he sent them away. They should get away from here, you know, because their finding actually went contrary to the thought of the leadership. It was actually the married people that were engaged more in immorality than the unmarried ones. So for me, my advice for people from our culture is that. Give people benefit of the doubt, allow people the liberty to live their lives. For those who are hoping to marry, when the time comes, they will marry by God's grace, if that is what His plans for them. And for those who will not get married, God is going to give them the grace to be able to bear that. And for those who are celibate by nature and by God's own design, they will be able to live their life and have the human dignity and respect that they desire within the culture that so much cherish marriage.
And still talking about this, I don't want to belabor the point.
Mm,
I think it's an important conversation.
mm,
Still talking about this idea of singleness and the way the culture tends to look at single people, especially in the African context. Um, don't you think some denominations or some churches contribute to this complexity? I give you an example. You and I work with EQUA.
mm.
You are an EQUA staff, and it's you find out that I don't know whether it is written specifically somewhere, maybe it's just some kind of verbal constitution, but single people are hardly licensed, not to even talk about ordination, right? If you are single doing ministry, preaching, doing great, you know how to espouse the scripture and do explicate and do all your theologies and do ministry very well. Somehow people don't ordain you. You have you ever met a single ordained pastor in Equa, for instance? So talk to me a little bit about the ecclesiastical traditions and mirror it down to our beloved denomination, Equa, how it contributes or complicates the situation.
I hope this is not a trap. Frank conversations, right?
I'm not setting you
and,
up for anything,
and,
believe
and,
me.
and, and I think this particular questions has a connection with my personal experience as well, just as the question about singleness. So I cherish this question, and I trust you, and I believe you. It's not a trap, right? I mean, I remember what my mentor, Professor Turaki, told me about trying to fight leadership. I mean, if you try to fight leadership, it's like you approaching them with your bow and arrow when they have machine guns that they can just bring you down. But that is not to say that we shouldn't critique. And I think that is one of the thing within the African culture that I find to be not so encouraging if we take it too far. But I know the Western world also takes it too far, such that little kids can challenge their parents, whatever the parents may say to them. But in Africa, again, younger people can never challenge, or people that are not in authority can never challenge those in authority, which is wrong. To come to your question directly, whether some denominations, and particularly such as the Evangelical Church, meaning all EQUA, and other denominations that would not ordain people until and unless they're married, are contributing to the pressures that young people are facing in terms of those who may not even want to marry, or those who are waiting for the appropriate time for them to be married. I would say yes and no. And there are so many things in between the yes and no. So yes, for the fact that if like you said, okay, let me approach it this way: is it in the books? It's one of those things that I actually walk to some people and talk to them about when I was pastoring, because I went for induction, pastor's induction. That's a language that you understand, and maybe some of your audiences will actually understand that language. You have to be inducted for you to be licensed, and then later ordained. And during the induction, I was privileged to be like the class rep. I was the class rep, so I was like the one coordinating the whole class. That was a good position. I mean, it was difficult, but a good position, right? But to tell you, the fact is that after that, so many people, I think maybe all those people in that particular cohort are actually ordained now, and I'm not, right? And why? You asked the question, okay, why?
Are you even licensed?
No. I'm a roadside pastor, right? In that sense, I mean, I don't need any license. I don't need any ordination. I just need God's calling to operate. And I'm glad, I'm grateful to God, and I'm grateful to EQUA that they gave me the opportunity to serve with the call of God upon my life. I'm grateful for that, right? I mean, it's just the institutional things and the rest of them. Sometimes, let me give you some stories, right? When there's marriage in my church, I'm the pastor of the church. So ideally, I should officiate the marriage, but they will never allow me to do that because no license, no ordination. Okay, so you cannot do it. And they'll say, all that you can do is to preach, right? And I love to preach. And that's not to say that preaching is easy for me. It's difficult. I don't know how to balance that. It's difficult, but also it's something I love to do. And so they end up giving me what I love to do because I don't have certain things that they think I should have. So those kind of things, yeah, they don't actually disturb me. But I think for some people, that may even lead them to go into marriage, because you just look at your friends, and even those who, like you and myself, who taught some people in the seminary setting. You just look at those who have taught, and right now they're reverend, they're whatever, they wear their collars, and they go about, and you're still there, not even licensed, just because you're not married. One can actually get the pressure of wanting to go into marriage in order to get certain benefits. If the church says that you cannot get certain benefits until you're married, there's some people who just go into marriage, and then during the marriage you're advised that marriage should not be entered lightly, right? That's one of the things they read to you. It shouldn't be entered unadvisedly. Marriage is not something that is trivial, that you just go and do it because you want to get certain benefits. It's more serious than that. All right. But if a church like my own church will say that you will never get certain benefits until you're married, then some people will just go and marry for the sake of marriage and for the sake of getting those benefits that the church says they can never get until they get married. And once they do that, I am not saying that that automatically and always would lead to trouble in their marriages, but that may actually lead to problems, because they must have they may have entered that unadvisedly, and they may have taken it lightly. Their decision may have been, influenced by the benefit factor of it, in terms of institutional benefit. But the other part of the answer that I said no, is that, yeah, in the culture too, we have to be considerate as well. But again, what I want to say could be critiqued by another denomination. That's the Roman Catholic denomination. Because if you say that a pastor who is not married is not responsible, what you're saying, you know, if you cross denomination to other denominations who are on the opposite side, right, that a priest shouldn't marry, right? If you say that the priest that is married is not married within your own denomination, is not quote unquote responsible as the culture may have it, then you may be saying that a priest in another church is not responsible because he's not married. So you see the inconsistency in that logic. So if a priest in another denomination that is not married is still considered as responsible, a priest in another denomination who is not married but married is required should also be given the benefit of the doubt, except if the individual himself fails to uphold, chastity. Then you deal with people on individual basis. But if a person is upright and up and doing and doing the work the way it should be done, I believe that people should be given opportunities, and the structures should not stop them. The structures should give them what they need. In my own case, I had no problem with my denomination. I appreciate ECWA for the opportunity I've had, and if anything, I should be an example to young people that you can, and that's a language that I like so much. Maybe not for myself, but for people who may be looking at me, or other people, not necessarily as a mentor, but just as what can one do in life, even with some hurdles that one may have. I believe that they will look at my life and say, yeah, I mean, there are some ways that you can navigate through some hurdles and do the things that God wants you to do.
Aptly put. I want us to kind of, go into other things to talk about. We have quite a lot to talk about today.
Yeah, but again, before we talk about what we're going to talk about marriage. There's someone who said something. Apart from the Bible, I also look at practical, people's marriages. I also read philosophers, and they can be confusing. And one of them, who is very fascinating about the whole life, about the whole of life, including marriage, is actually Soren Kierkegaard. And one of the things that Soren Kierkegaard said, I'm not advising anyone to do that or take this philosophy into heart or try to, do that. I mean, he actually said that, he went to the extreme. Kill yourself. He's talking about life. Kill yourself and you will regret it. Don't kill yourself and you will regret it. Kill yourself or don't kill yourself and you will regret it. Either way, you will regret it. He said, marry and you will regret it. Don't marry and you will regret it. Marry or don't marry, you will regret it. Either way, you will regret it. So in that sense, you ask yourself, so what do?
You just do what you've got to do.
And take the regret. That is it. Sorry for taking that few minutes.
No, I mean, we are not going into some Kierkegaard, philosophy here, because that would be a different conversation. So let's leave Kierkegaard where he is, and talk about. By the way, I would love to read what Jeremiah. He's a pastor. What he says, which I think it kind of resonates with what we've been talking about. He said. African culture pressures more so church denominational requirement. I pray someday we'll have unmarried ordained reverends in Equa, pure and blameless in the ministry. And he's sending his greeting to you. Yeah, so some of us also pray for that time that we will begin to look at some of these things and reconsider them more critically, especially from an ecclesiological, biblical, theological perspective. I want us to talk about some of the things you do. You are a student of theology, religion, ethics, philosophy, politics, history, culture, some anthropology there. And so I don't even know what we should talk about looking at the divergence of your fields of interest and some of the things you've been doing over the years. But I want us to at Harvard you studied religion, politics, and ethics. That combination, which is a real combination to find at a graduate level, religion, ethics, and politics.
Yeah.
To given your experience, your academic experience, and also your experiential experience, so to speak, and adding to your observations about contemporary politics in the African and specifically Nigerian context. What is going on? How do you see these three, variables of religion, politics, and ethics? How do you see those playing on the Nigerian political spectrum?
Thank you so
And
much
try
for.
before you answer, let me just say, try to avoid all the technical jargons, so that this will be accessible to anyone. I know you can
Yeah.
go, so try to avoid those as much as possible,
I
if you
think for
can.
me,
If you
thank you
can.
so much for the advice, and I appreciate it. For me, I like to be a down to earth, person who connects with just everyone. I mean, if you just speak in a kind of language that is jargon, such that only people in a certain class understand, then for me, you are not doing what you need to do. And if you're a scholar and you cannot explain things to a teenager in such a way that a teenager can understand, I'm not saying that anyone is a teenager here, but I'm just making a general critique of those who may think of themselves as scholars just because they speak in languages that other people do not understand. That doesn't make you a scholar. That makes you someone who is maybe posing as one, but not really one, if you cannot explain things in simple terms. So thank you so much for this question. And I will actually say that what informed my choice, of course, at Harvard, it was the fact that it is related to what was happening back home in Nigeria. All right. So what informed my choice of religion, ethics, and politics as my area of focus was what was going on back home, but I also think that generally speaking, there's no way you can separate or you can divorce religion from politics. You can divorce politics from ethics, or ethics from politics, or ethics from religion, and all that, because they are intertwined. I think the separation of the disciplines is what created more confusion somehow. And these days, I think people are talking about interdisciplinary or multidisciplinary or whatever kind of studies, bringing the disciplines together again. Why? Because the central factor in all of these things is the human being. Is the human being. And as Aristotle will say, human beings are political animals. Sorry to say, we know we're more than animals, but that is how I see it. In biological sense, that is what it is. So biological. I mean, according to Aristotle, political animals. So that what that means is that in anywhere you find human beings, there's going to be politics. If you're a father in the home, a mother in the home, a child in the home, there are points and times whether you want to project or you want to advance certain causes within the family. It may be your own personal interest. It may be the interest of the family. It may be the interest of one other member of the family that you want to project, that you want to pursue and whatever within the family. And that is politics. And children do that a lot, I think. They come to the dad and they pretend as if dad, I think we should take some ice cream. I think you need some ice cream, as if they are thinking about the dad needing an ice cream, but they actually need to take some ice cream, and that's why they feel the dad also need to take some. And that is politics, right? I mean, you try to get what you want through certain means and things like that. So politics is part of human life. What about religion? Religion is also part of human life. Whether one considers herself to be religious or not, everyone has something they venerate, something that they hold to be very, very important. Even, not believing in God could be something that someone believes in so much that that is what governs their life. So if not believing in God is what one holds on to and governs one's life, that is a religion in a broader sense of the word religion. So there's no one who can actually escape religion in a broad sense of the word religion. So now, what about ethics? Life is all about, what we ought to do. That is in terms of maybe what people consider to be the good life. Despite the fact that we have the freedom to do whatever we want, but freedom is actually not the freedom to do whatever we want. It's the freedom to do whatever we ought to do. And sometimes, if you are a religious person, it's the religion to which that you belong, if you take it seriously, that defines what those right things and wrong things, those ethics, those things that you ought to do are. And if you're not a religious person, whatever society you belong to, there are political, constitutions and so many other, laws and whatever that will determine what is right and what is wrong. When you do this, you get that, and the rest of them. Those are ethical codes that people live by. Right, so ethics is part of human society as well. Though I think, generally speaking, what is wrong seems to be wrong everywhere. But sometimes what is wrong in one society is right in some other societies. So that complicates the whole argument about what is right and what is wrong. But that is a lesser part of it. But I think most part of it is that what is considered ethical in certain places is most likely to be considered, ethical in other places. So I did what I did right now, connecting human life and society to religion, ethics, and politics, to say that there is no way any human being can escape all these three. And in Nigeria, you see the intersection of religion, ethics, and politics. The intersection between religion, ethics, and politics must not necessarily be negative. It could be a positive intersection. For example, if my religious ethics says that I should love my neighbor as myself, that could be a very good ethics for a pluralistic society. And if my ethics, my religious ethics, tells me to love my enemy and do good to those who hate me, that is a good ethics to live by in a pluralistic setting. All right. So my religious ethics can influence my politics in a good way, can influence my interaction with other people in the society in a right way. But my religious, ethics, if it tells me to hate those who are not like me or don't belong to the same religion as myself, could be detrimental. If my religious ethics says that I should overpower anyone who does not belong to my own religion, that could be detrimental. So you can see that intersection. But whether religion is, because some people will actually say religion is what is fueling violence in a place like Nigeria, either within the political circle where you find stalemate, people cannot progress because some other people are thinking about what advantages certain laws or certain rules or certain appointments or certain whatever within the country are going to have, what effects they are going to have on their own religious group or their ethnicity or whatever. All right. And so if they find out that it's not going to be advantageous to their own religious group or ethnic group, they may, even if it's good for the whole nation, may not allow that to happen. And that will cause a stalemate in the political space. But like I said earlier, religion could be a very good factor. But even if you think that religion is a bad factor within politics and you remove religion, I have noticed that social identity, whatever it is, happens to impact, and that is part of my research, happens to impact, people's personal choices and social actions, social and political actions. So if you remove religion from the equation, the most prevalent, the strongest social identity that replaces religion is likely to be the one to influence people's daily choices and political actions out there. And eventually, those values are not divorced from personal or group interest. Right. So if they are not divorced from group interest, what actually fuels violence may not be religion itself. It could be religion if it teaches wrong ethics, like I said earlier on. It could be that. If a religion tells someone within its community to hate other people who do not belong to that religion, then that the ethics of the religion itself is wrong, right? But if the religion is, for example, that which says that you should love your enemies and do good to those who hate you, or you love your neighbor as yourself, or whatever the religion says that is good for common good, then religion is not really to be considered a problem, but that human interest. I usually give an example that if you look at religion as a problem in Nigeria, and you just conclude, and not just in Nigeria, in other places as well, people will just conclude that religion is a problem. So we can remove religion, and then everywhere Nigeria will be peaceful, the world will be peaceful, and whatever. No. Look at a place like, for example, India. Is religion really the problem? I know religion is some problem in India as well, but the real problem in India is caste, the caste system. So what that means is that people found something that is going to make them separate themselves from other people and act in such a way that may be inimical, in such a way that may be detrimental to people who do not belong to the same group. If you look at a place like the US, it's a wonderful place. The experiment that is happening here in the US for hundreds of years is the best human experiment in terms of democratic society. But the US also has its own thing here, and that is race, right? So it seems to be race. So if you think about religion in Nigeria as a potential trouble sport. You can look at caste as a potential trouble sport. You can look at race as a potential. I say potential because it mustn't necessarily lead to those things that are negative, but sometimes it leads to that. In the case of Nigeria, let me come back and be very specific and maybe conclude, hopefully take some other question. Human beings, like I said, are interested beings. So within their ethics, their religion, and their politics, there is interest. And there's something I call interest theory, and I intend to write about it. Hopefully I'll have time to write about interest theory, but I'm not about to explain it here because we don't have the time. We don't have all that it takes to be able to do it here. But interest, let me clarify, are not necessarily bad interest all of the time. I may have an interest that is for the good of another person. That is a good interest. But I may have an interest that is for my own good to the detriment of another person. That is the kind of interest that is causing trouble in places like Nigeria. And politicians in particular use whatever they feel is the strongest, social identity that people align with to push their own personal interest. And so if you think about a place like Nigeria, what is the strongest social identity in Nigeria? Some people say it's ethnicity in some places. Some people say it's religion. But I think it's religion. Religion is the strongest social identity. So if a politician want to take advantage of any particular social identity at any particular time in a national kind of space, what do you think the politician is going to use? Religion. And we have seen politicians use religion. And we have seen where that has taken Nigeria. And I think today people are even complaining about where Nigeria is because religion has been so politicized and weaponized and is used as a vehicle to attain power. And power for the sake of power, power for the sake of self-interest, and power not really for the sake of the masses, of bettering the life of the masses. So that is why we have the problems that we have in Nigeria. If you remove religion, then ethnicity may be the social identity that some people begin to use. If you remove ethnicity, then regionalism may be something that some people begin to use. If you remove region, some people will just fabricate something else to say, okay, your nose looks different from my own. So all those whose nose look like your own, we don't like them. So we begin to fight against their interest.
And talking about religion as a social construct and weapons, to speak, that given the Nigerian context, that many people, especially the politicians, exploit for their own self-interest, right? What do you say about, though I know you have tried to explicate that at some point in one way or another, but what do you say about the concept of the separation of church and state, given the Nigerian context and given the dynamics of the multiplicity of religions in Nigeria?
Well, thank you so
Specifically
much for
Christianity and Islam.
Yeah. I mean, someone said that Nigeria is 50% Christian, 50% Muslim, and 100% indigenous religion. But I don't agree with that. But that seems to have some truth because some people go back to their village when things get tough, right? I mean, but that is not the kind of Christianity that I advocate for, and of course, I think that is not the kind of Islam that the Orthodox Islam would advocate for. So, in that sense, in the political space in Nigeria, Islam and Christianity are the dominant religion, and the factors to deal with. The indigenous religion has been relegated to, the backstage in Nigerian politics. And this is neither good nor bad. That's not what I'm saying. But in terms of representation, everyone should be represented. If it is representing, then that is representation. Then that is something bad. But in terms of what is happening, is Nigeria a secular state? What is the definition of secularism? Is Nigeria a secular state in the sense that the US is a secular state?
Maybe it is on paper.
Yeah. So you can see that Nigeria in practice is not a secular state because religious codes are enshrined even within the constitution. Right? And you have parallel legal systems that are working together, the common law, and then the Sharia law, and then the customary law. So all those ones are working in parallel, and sometimes no intersection. So it's like two states within one, because some of the laws do not agree. I remember one senator who married a minor in Nigeria, and that senator was challenged. Why would you marry a minor? And he actually went somewhere else to marry the minor. To be precise, he went to Egypt. Maybe he wants someone who looks different from Nigerian women or something like that. I don't know. But he married a minor from another country. And when he was challenged, women came out. They were, protesting and things like that. And what he said was that he has done nothing wrong based on the Sharia code and what the antecedents, what do they call this in Islam? The traditions of the prophet. There's a technical name for that, but I don't want to go into that. But to summarize, what
The hadith?
the hadith, based on the hadith, the traditions of the prophet, he had not done anything wrong. Was he wrong or was he right? By Nigeria's common law, the senator was wrong. By the Islamic code, the senator
Was
was
right.
right. So what do you do?
You see conflict of interest there.
Yeah. In terms of groups and in terms of whether Nigeria is a secular state or it's not a secular state. If you operate these laws concurrently and parallel, and then there are conflicts within these laws, then you should expect things like that. For me, I'm not saying that abusing a minor girl is something minor, is something small. No, it's something really big and should be abhorred. Someone should be able to reach an age where they can take decision before they can go into marriage. That is my own personal belief, and that is what the laws in Nigeria said. And the law says in the accountability age in Nigeria, if it hasn't changed, is 18 years old before one can go into such kind of contract as marriage, right? But you see, to answer your question, this example that I just brought of this senator is a practical way of answering your question. Nigeria is not a secular state. It's a mixture of secularism and religiosity, and that is a problem.
Before you go to talk a little bit about your PhD dissertation, before you even went into the doctoral program, I know we have spoken extensively about that, and I found it to be very fascinating. You are from the northern part of Nigeria, but for some reasons you are basing your research on the south, specifically the Yoruba people, because of those three dimensions that you talk about. So I'm not the one doing the research. I want you to kind of explain briefly what your research interest is, your PhD research with the Yoruba, looking at those three dimensions and how that applies, how you intend to see that apply to the general Nigerian and to the Nigerian context and generally to the African context, understanding some of these dimensions that we have been talking about in Africa.
Great. Yes, I'm from the north. I was born and raised in Kaduna State, and part of my upbringing, I would say, is in Plateau State. And most of my schooling is in Plateau State, so I identify with Plateau State very, very much as well. But in terms of where I was born in Kaduna State, and Kaduna State. I'm from the southern part of Kaduna State, but it's still Kaduna State, nevertheless. I'm not here to begin to separate and say this is that and that is what. And maybe that's why I'm dressed like this, but that is not the reason. I just feel like this is how I want to dress. But that is not to say that I don't cherish where I come from. I cherish that very much. And I think in some sense, if this interview were to be in Hausa, then I can say, na iya Hausa kaman jakin Kano. But this is not the place to do it. And yeah, but just to say, I love my context. I love where I'm coming from. And I wish well for the North. I wish well for Nigeria. Wish well for America and the world at large. So my research is basically about social identity and how our social identity impacts our personal choices and social political actions. Right, and the social identity, because social identities are many social identity. You can identify, like my friend here, he identifies as as just himself, right? Seth, as a scholar, as a reverend, as a father, as a husband, as a whatever. Those are social identities. So one will
Keep
have.
going on. Keep going on.
I'm out of words, so you can help me with that. So just to say that social identity is something that is somehow endless, but there are some social identities that people hold dear to. And one of those, I mean, or two of those are the ones that I'm focusing on, and that is religion and ethnicity. And why I chose to do my research. I'm not yet in that stage in my PhD where I'll begin to do the research. I'm still in the kind of I just finished my Q exams, and I'm happy about that. I'm grateful to God about that I passed my Q exams. Then the next phase is going to be the A exams. That's what I'm aiming at the moment, at the end of the next academic year. Then after that, I'll be working on the B exams, and that will be when I'll be doing the practical research in my fourth year. I think that's where it's going to happen. So why I chose the Yoruba people is because in Yoruba land, the Yoruba land is one of those areas in Nigeria where you find the three religious traditions, um, uh, you know, Christianity, Islam, and the indigenous religion, still very much in some ways active, though Islam and Christianity are more active in the West, in the western part of Nigeria than any other thing. But still, there's the presence of the indigenous religion. So I still want to factor that. I want to see how the indigenous religion also impacts people as a social identity, also impacts people's social and personal, choices. And I am doing this in the southwestern part of Nigeria, like I said, because of this one reason. And another reason is the fact that there seems to be changes within the southwestern part of Nigeria. The southwestern part of Nigeria has been seen as the bastion of hope, that because they do not use religion for political interest, that is why we don't see all the fights that we see in the north and things like that. That there's some kind of different kind of Christianity and Islam in the southwest than it is in the north and things like that. But there seems to be changes. If you look at what's happening in Kwara, the recent fight where church-owned schools were destroyed and forcefully confiscated by government and things like that. I don't know the details, but you can check the details. You look at those things, and you look at at a point. I don't know what year was that, but I think in 2017 there was what the newspapers captioned as "War of Religious Clothes," where pupils or secondary school students wore their religious attires because Muslims were wearing the hijab and whatever to go to school. So some people wore white garment and choir robes and whatever. They also went to school to show that, okay, if you're religious, we're also religious and things like we're within the Yoruba land, right? So one of the hypotheses is that religion is taking over as the most potent social identity within the Yoruba land. And if that is what is happening, what impact would that have within the Yoruba land and also the nationwide political, social, economic, and whatever space? What impact is that going to have? I believe it's going to have impact, right? And since religion has been used for political tools, one politician has even said at some point that if his brothers in the southwest are going to vote for him, he will become a president. And who are his brothers? Not the Christian from the southwest, a particular religious group from the southwest. I have to be precise. It's not in hidden. It's not hidden. It's written everywhere. So it's not something that I am saying. It's written on newspapers. You can go and read. And eventually, this person is a president, because I don't want to say because his brothers voted for him, but I'll be theological, because in God's providence, despite the results that has brought to Nigeria and Nigerians, in God's providence, God felt, oh, let it just happen that way. But to conclude on this, I am not studying the Yoruba people for just studying the Yoruba people, or Nigeria for just studying the Nigerians. I mean Nigerians, right? My take on theorizing, whether social theory, political theory, or philosophical theory, as that of my professor, also Professor Olufemi Taiwo, is that if your theory is not applicable everywhere, then your theory is not a good theory. So it's not that, okay, I'm studying the Yoruba people, so I've neglected the northern people, whatever. No, I neglected the US people or South American people, or Indian people. No, the theory that I'm going to bring, that I'm going to work on expounding or explicating, or whatever word is there again to use, is a theory that should be universally applicable. But the Yoruba people, the context of the southwestern part of Nigeria provides a very good, setting for the kind of research I want to do. So that's why I'm doing it there.
Okay, I have one more question for you before I allow you to go. But before I that, I want you to respond to our boss's question, the Reverend Zakaria Chine.
Okay.
He's asking whether we think, or you think you are the person doing the talking. So I think this question should be directed to you.
Okay.
Let me say, Enoch, do you think that the major religions in Nigeria have figured out the difference between peace loving and peace living? And he's asking whether he's creating an unnecessary tension.
Uh, yeah, that's my boss, Reverend Zakaria Chine. So thank you so much for that question. My Oga at the top. I just salute. Yeah. uh, Peace loving and peace living. Can one be peace loving without being peace living, or without living in peace with other people? In real sense, I think the answer is no. So in that sense, I think there is no tension between peace loving and peace living. But I think people can be so conflated. I think so conflicted, such that we can live with psychic dissonance of assuming that we are peace loving while not living in peace. So in the sense that we can be, we can live in a kind of psychic dissonance, the answer is yes, that people can actually be peace loving but not living in peace. But dissonance is not the right state, that's like right state of mind to be, to operate in. The reality, or what ought to be, let me go back to ethics. What ought to be is that if you're peace loving, you should be peace living, or you should live in peace as well. So with that, I think it's a good place to call on people who so much believe in peace. Right? If you so much believe in peace, you think you love peace, then how are you living to make sure that what you believe in and what you love is actually made manifest in within the social setting that you live? Or you make sure, what are you doing to make sure that the fact that you love peace is seen in the way you act and the way you relate to other people, especially those people who are different than you?
I'm not a psychic to be able to read Reverend Chine's mind, but I'll attempt to think that probably this question is coming from an understanding of the Nigerian context, where everyone seems to be preaching peace. Everyone seems to be talking about we are peace living people. So if you talk about culturally, people talk we are peace loving people, cultures, or the different ethnic groups in Nigeria. Everyone tells you that we are peace loving people. And if you apply that to the issue of religion, the two major religions in Nigeria, vis-a-vis Christianity and Islam, everyone talks about peace, right? So in that general sense, everyone is a peace-loving person in Nigeria. But when it comes to the experiential, what is applicable, what is observable, people are not living in peace. So probably, just as I said, I'm not a psychic. I don't know a good interpretation of what he's thinking, but I would just want to put it that way. I want to hear your comment about that.
Yeah, I think in that sense is right. But I want to bring this analogy or this example. If I say, okay, I love you, but I'm coming at you with a knife, would you listen to what I'm saying or take heed to what I'm doing? I say, oh, I love you, and I'm really coming at you. I love you, but I'm coming to really bring you down with my knife. I guess that you wouldn't listen to what I'm saying. You will actually take heed to what I'm doing. So we should be very careful with people who say they love peace but are doing things that are contrary to acts that will show that they actually love peace. Because the action, like we usually say, is a cliche now, and people maybe don't think about it anymore. They say action speaks louder than voice. Action speaks louder than voice. So we shouldn't believe those who say they love peace if what they're doing doesn't show that they actually love peace. But I always will want to give people the benefit of the doubt. That's why I brought the issue of the dissonance, right? They may, oh yeah, they actually love peace. Everyone wants peace somehow for themselves, but maybe not peace for the other person. And what we fail to understand is that if the other person doesn't have peace, you also wouldn't have peace in a particular social setting, except if you are living in a different place. But you are living in the same place. If one person doesn't have peace and that is caused by you, you too wouldn't have peace. But to answer the question straight, yep, I think people can actually have those dissonance of believing
Yeah,
that they
so
love.
this is just a confirmation from the Reverend Zachariah Chine. He says, I think you guys capture my mind, even without having psychic powers. Our religion is peace loving. It's often gets thrown at
Mm,
us when we see what we see is an obvious contradiction.
mm,
And I think that is basically what is obtainable in the general Nigerian society. Everyone
mm,
preaches peace, everyone proclaims peace. I love the illustration with coming with someone and trying to injure them, but you are saying something in that instance or in that particular situation, what the person, the respondent, so to speak, will be looking at your action, not your words, right?
mhm.
It's not what that really matters or counts. What really counts is what you do. So it's not for you to go about saying that you are peace loving. Show it by your attitude and the way
Mm.
you act. For some reasons, I kind of forget the question that I wanted, the last question I
But
wanted to ask.
let me say something here
Mhm.
by quoting what is his name, Martin Nemula, who, I mean, not him, Alexander Solzhenitsyn, who actually said, because we may have the proclivity to begin to have a dividing line to say that, okay, uh, those are the evil people who may say they believe in peace but don't act peacefully, and these are the good people who say they believe in peace and they act peacefully. We may have the proclivity, and maybe in a general sense, that may be true. But as Solzhenitsyn said, the line between good and evil is not between people, but within our hearts. So the good people and the bad people, they are in our hearts, wherever you belong. So, but generally speaking, yeah, we can say that there are people who live by this dissonance, but we shouldn't just say, okay, all these people are evil, but these other people are good people. That would be dangerous.
I mean, the statement is it's not even generalizing in any
Mm.
way. It's not a matter of stereotyping,
Yeah.
right? Whether on religious or ethnic, from religious or ethnic
Mm.
standpoint, to see what you do, right? What you do goes a long way.
Yeah. Yeah.
For instance, you and I are Christians. Jesus Christ, when he was on earth, of course, the prophets proclaimed before he was even born that he will be the Prince of Peace, right? When
Yeah.
Jesus came, he wasn't talking about, here am I am peace loving. We didn't see him doing that, right?
Mm.
But by his actions, by the way he interacted with people, related with people, everyone knew that this person was peace loving.
Yeah. I actually say that to say that um, I sometimes catch myself hating, and I'm a Christian, right? Something would just happen. I mean, 10 people killed here, 20 people killed there, whatever people. I just become mad, right? I mean, who is doing that? It's like, okay, if you give me a gun at that particular time, I will go at those people I consider to be evil who are doing those things, right? So
Yeah,
you can see, but
just the
does that?
thoughts, right? just
Huh?
just just to put the word out there to censor this, you are just saying the proclivity to think that way,
Yeah,
right?
the
Okay.
proclivity. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So every one of us, we have. I mean, we have the proclivity to do evil. That's what I'm saying. But some settings more than others encourage the exhibition of that proclivity.
Mhm.
And we believe that, and I think I believe that the ethical, community that one belongs to, which includes religion, could foster one or the other proclivity. And some religions, I think, by the teachings of the books, seem to encourage certain proclivity that make people to get violent. So even if let's get, for example, let's talk about Islam, for example. People would actually say, and I believe them that they are sincere when they say that their religion is the religion of peace. They're sincere, and in most cases they believe it, and in most cases they actually want it to be so, right? But if you look at it, what about people like ISWAP, ISIS West Africa? What about people like Boko Haram? You see, they have found within the text some loopholes, some text that they could interpret to say that, okay, if you don't belong to us, we just finish you. So even if you're a Christian, most especially I know they go after people who are not Muslims, but we know that they also go after Muslims who don't believe what they believe as well. So, but how did they get to the point where they got to? They have text. So while other the majority of Muslims will look at it and say, okay, you are misinterpreting the text. This is not what the text says, or maybe you bring another text and say, oh, this is not what it means. But they nevertheless have a text. They say, okay, this is the text that is telling us to do what we're doing, and we're doing it because this text says we should do it. So what do you do with that? There has to be some kind of reform. But even if there's a reform, I think I'm not a prophet. I'm not a doomsday, prophet. As long as those texts remain, there will be people who will give it the kind of interpretation that ISIS and Boko Haram and whatever give it, whatever the reforms may be.
What a very good way to end this conversation. Once again, I want to thank you so much for making time out of your busy schedules to just have this interaction. Just as I said, I call this brother of mine a scholar. You can see he is really, really the scholar, right? If you have followed this conversation, you know that this brother is loaded with a lot of things. He knows his stuff, and in case you want to continue to have this conversation with him, you can do that directly with him. But once again, thank you for making time to be part of this conversation. For all of you that contributed and participated in one way or another, I want to appreciate you. Until I come your way next time with another interesting episode of the interview. Bye for now.
Thank you so much, the scholar. I appreciate you for this opportunity. Thank you so much.